Hey, I'm Keith Spira from NOLA.com and the Times-Picayune. My guest this week on Let's Talk is Kevin Griffin, the singer, guitarist, and primary songwriter of Better Than Ezra. We'll talk about the 30th anniversary of the band's deluxe album and what happened when they played at the Saints Super Bowl victory party. Tune in this week on Let's Talk.
We're local and educational. You're watching WLAE-TV, celebrating 40 years of New Orleans public television.
Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by...
At Villeries Florist, we deliver the magic of flowers 7 days a week to the North Shore and South Shore in the New Orleans area. Whether it's for birthday parties, baby celebrations, Villeries provides colorful floral displays for all. With a store full of fresh-cut flowers, exotic tropical flowers, orchids, roses, and even fruit baskets, our goal is to make your vision a reality. Villeries Florist, proudly serving Louisiana since 1969.
Dave Miette Insurance Agency. Auto, home, flood, business, 504-556-0809. Dave Miette, INSagency.com.
C&C Drugs is a family-owned pharmacy that's been serving Southeast Louisiana for over 50 years. Whether you need help taking care of an elderly family member, a growing child, or even a pet, C&C provides patient-centered care for your entire family. C&C Drugs, large enough to serve you, small enough to know you. Locations in Mandeville and Araby.
Good evening and welcome to another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Over the next hour, cover all the home teams we always do. Saints, LSU, Tulane Pelicans. We'll talk about NAIA baseball tournament as well. Join us on our program to the best we have. Jude Young, CrescentCitySports.com, and of course 1067 The Ticket, and the sports director over Channel 26 Sports, Richie Mills, joins us on our program today. Guys, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming down as always. We'll start with you, Jude. Tell the folks about everything you're involved in, Crescent City Sports, and of course the radio station as well.
Well, I'll go with the latter first because Eric and I are back-to-back each
indeed.
weekday. I'm on at 6 to 7 with All Access, and certainly expanding the sports block has been a lot of fun. We're only a couple months into it, but we're hoping that the station continues to grow and grow as New Orleans' only 24/7 sports radio station. And of course at CrescentCitySports.com, a lot of stuff is partnered there. This week we're going to try, weather permitting, to bring the big semifinal series in Division I Select between Brother Martin and Holy Cross. We're going to have the broadcast on Thursday night. Looks like weather for sure based on when you're watching this. Who knows for the rest of the weekend, but we'll try to figure it out. But we're covering everything, high school, college, and the pros with a great group of writers. And I'm sort of the traffic cop who gets to see all that stuff come in every day and share it with folks out there.
Of course, again, Jude Young Show 6 to 7, Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday on the ticket. So make sure you're checking that out as well. Richie, welcome back to the show.
Sir, thanks
a very, very busy man over there. I've been calling him, Richie, I need you to come join us. And Richie's been busy, but I'm glad he made some time for us today. A lot of stuff going on at Channel 26.
A lot. So you can catch me weeknights, WGNO News at 6 and 10. Of course, Friday nights at 10:30 on NOLA 38. We have the WGNO Sports Zone, which right now covers a variety of topics, but in the fall it's basically a college football specific show. And then, of course, that replay Saturday morning at 10:30 on WGNO. And then, of course, right now we're dealing with Friday Night Fastball presented by Delgado Community College. That'll happen at 11 o'clock on NOLA 38. The replay always at midnight Friday night. So, again, it's busy. You talk about the Holy Cross Brother Martin series. We're going to be there. We're going to be E.D. White Hannon, University Lab, Pope John Paul, and then Covenant Christian, 35-0 right now. They're in the quarterfinal round of Division IV Select playoffs. So again, there's a ton going on right now. We just hope the weather cooperates, and it just feels like it's never going to end now.
Yeah, no doubt. And I do want to say this again: high school sports, Channel 26 on television, Crescent City Sports online, and of course also giving you a lot of games that you can see. Nobody does it better. With that said, high school baseball, what are we looking at here?
Well, like we mentioned here, those local series of note, not a lot of local teams made it to the semifinal round this year, which is set up a lot better than it has been in the past because we have semifinal best 2 out of 3 series now. It used to be the final 4 in the bigger classifications, or in this case divisions, would meet in Sulphur and play one-off semifinal and then final. Now every round, including the Sulphur part at the end for the finals, best 2 out of 3. So that leads, for I think, to a truer champion and a lot more excitement, and certainly a lot more for folks like Richie to cover, putting it together on WGNO. But Holy Cross, the 2 seed, Brother Martin, the 3 seed. A lot of people are going to be watching that series. Of course, 2 Catholic League rivals. Should be a really good series. Brother Martin is a team that I think is playing its best baseball right now, so they might have a little edge going in there, but Holy Cross is playing with a lot of confidence, so I'm hoping for a great 3-game series in that one.
Richie, which you would...
And people don't realize this too. Holy Cross started the season 17-0. They were the top team in Division I Select. That includes Catholic of Baton Rouge, who was nationally ranked last year, won a national championship last year, but they were swept in their opening series of Catholic League play to the Catholic League champions, which just so happens to be Brother Martin, their opponent in the semifinals. So if you need some context and some parity there it is. But no, there are a ton of great teams, a ton of great matchups. I mean, Covenant Christian, I know I just mentioned it, they're 35-0. They've been the best story maybe in high school baseball this season, and I think they've tried to lose in these scrimmages even after the regular season ended. They had a 2.5-week layoff from their postseason opener. They beat John Curtis towards the end of the regular season. They scheduled Brother Martin for a scrimmage, and they still couldn't lose that. So again, it's kind of funny to see them, but you mentioned the 3-game series, which I think it does give you the true champion, but it also takes away the fun and excitement of an upset in the postseason, like we saw Rummel do with Catholic a few years ago. But Covenant Christian right now is in a single elimination bracket, so they won't get a 3-game series. So 1 loss and they're out. You can look at their 35-0 season and be like, that's impressive, but 1 loss in the postseason, your season's over. So I think, and then E.D. White, Hannon, I think those are 2 great stories. One upset the 2 seed, the other upset the 3 seed. E.D. White is 2 years removed from a state championship. Hannon's been a great story all year long. So again, the storylines are there. High school sports are great, and that's why we cover it so
and again,
effectively.
And I'll say it again, between Crescent City Sports and WGNO, you're getting everything you need to know about high school athletics here in the metropolitan area. They do a fantastic job covering both. All right, let's talk Saints first, and I want to get you guys. We're going to talk about Derek Carr in a minute, but again, I want to get you guys' take on the draft, because again, I like the draft. Okay, again, I think that they filled positions of need, with the exception of wide receiver. The fact that they showed some restraint, okay, and utilize their picks was a plus to me. And also, again, not going into next year's picks to be able to try to move up to get 1 player. Jude, take you first. What do you like about the draft? What don't you like about the draft?
You know, it's interesting. There's a prevailing wisdom that this draft will be judged by what Tyler Shugg does. But I don't necessarily know if that's the case.
I would agree with that.
Even though you're taking a high-ish second-round pick, 40th overall, and investing in a quarterback for a franchise that hasn't done that in over 5 decades, it is a significant storyline, and he may play a ton this year, obviously. But I think what they did with 9 picks is huge, because you mentioned the word restraint. They sat where they were in the draft, and they realized we've got needs everywhere. So why don't we go shopping, play the board, and I think, and especially the 3rd day, they got a lot of value at every spot. I really think they did a fine job of saying, hey, this is a long-term, let's restock the roster with young talent that fits our new systems on both sides of the ball. Really, the defensive side of the ball is where I was impressed. Obviously, we're going to talk about Kelvin Banks. He needs to be a plus starter somewhere on the offensive line, preferably left tackle, to make number 9 overall make a lot of sense. But I think he'll wind up being a very good starter as a floor. That's what you want, an impact player that high in the draft. But after that, I just like what they were able to do starting late in the 3rd round, coming up with Jonas Sanker, the safety from Virginia, because I think there's a vision that he and Justin Reed could be the guys who are the split safeties in the back end of a defense that's going to play more zone and have 2 physical safeties that can handle their business, disguise coverages, and come up and make plays on the ball and be sure tacklers. Then you have somebody in Quincy Riley who fell a little bit, I think, because of size, and maybe he didn't have quite as good a season this past year at Louisville as the one before, but you're picking nits on a guy who also fits that idea of seeing more zone and being able to come up, whether he does play in the slot, or he plays the boundary where he proved he could be successful on the college level, come up and make plays on the ball. He's constantly around the football, and he's a sure tackler. And Danny Stutzman is a linebacker. Why not draft somebody who could be your future after Demario Davis, who's in his mid-30s? If you can get that kind of value early on the third day of the draft, you're doing well. And I love Devin Neal. I think he fell because the draft was so deep at running back, and he didn't have these crazy measurables or breakaway speed. He's going to be an impact player who's going to play a lot. He hardly ever fumbles, and he's been durable. If he brings that to this team, he fills a huge hole because Alvin Kamara can't do it all, and Kendre Miller is a guy you can't necessarily trust. So again, I look at the draft picks individually, where they were taken, the value on the board, and the needs for changes, particularly on the defensive side of the ball. I think they did a great job.
How about you, Rich?
I'm going to be a little bit more honest here. I think outside of day one, I think Kelvin Banks was a fantastic pick. I thought that's what they needed. Day two is the biggest question mark for me because potentially you draft Tyler Shugg, who could be your third string quarterback if Derek Carr is healthy, which Mickey Loomis and company pretty much said after the draft that day. I love Danny Stutzman. I love Quincy Riley based off the need at cornerback. I thought that was a big need they could have addressed earlier, and I love Devin Neal. I think those are the top picks of the draft. Everything else is a question mark to me because when you look at last year's draft, a ton of those day three, day two picks didn't even see the field last year. So again, it just felt like they reached at all the wrong points in the draft to me, and that was just my opinion on it. I thought you needed a wide receiver. You said none were available, but it kind of seemed like plenty were still on the board when you were picking on day two. You could have used those. I just thought cornerback was a bigger need. They could have addressed earlier in the draft. You lose Paulson to Debo. You're putting a lot of trust in Alontae Taylor and Kool-Aid McKinstry, who again, battling injuries out of the draft last year. He played 15 games, but is that someone you definitively want to say is going to play opposite of Alontae Taylor? I know you bring back Isaac Yedem. He did some good things for you in some kind of relief capacity, but I just thought the positions of need, they didn't wholeheartedly address when they should have, and they reached in all the wrong points. But Tyler Shugg, I mean, unfortunately, you said that's how we're going to judge this draft class moving forward. But when Mickey Loomis and company come out and say if Derek Carr is healthy, he's our starter, I don't think Spencer Rattler's experience was going to put him behind anyone in this draft class. I thought everyone in this draft class, unfortunately, was not going to be as prepared as Spencer Rattler was given the circumstances he played under last year. So again, it's unfortunate when you hear management come out and say if Carr's healthy, he's going to play, because now you're thinking to yourself, you just spent a second-round draft pick, 40th overall, on potentially a third-string quarterback.
And that's that. If there is a big question mark to me, that's it. And honestly, a reach in this draft, that's it to me, because at 40, you just got to be a plug-and-play player. And if you're telling me Tyler Shuck's going to be your quarterback for the next 10 years, then okay, I'm fine. But I don't know if Tyler Shuck's going to be the quarterback for the next 10 years.
Well, nobody knows with any quarterback when you take one, right? So the issue is, did they in the end feel like they were so pressured to bring another young quarterback into the room when there's no answers in free agency, and we're assuming Derek Carr doesn't take another regular season snap? Did they just feel boxed into it? Maybe that's the case, but at least some draft analysts, like I know in particular, Todd McShay, who I still have a lot of respect for, really was banging the drum for Shugg late in the draft process, seeing the film of him finally getting a chance to play a full season and stay healthy. Yes, those flags are huge because can he stay healthy? That's why he was in college for 7 years, right? But playing in a pro system at Louisville, and not an ideal system as far as the talent around him, wasn't bad, but there wasn't a lot of elite around him, and being able to perform as well as he did, I think that really impressed. And the interview process, just like we saw Shedeur Sanders, I think it was much more about Shedeur than it was about Dion, and worried about attitude issues. He interviewed poorly. He didn't impress NFL teams, including the Saints, who clearly weren't interested after meeting with him, didn't send representatives to the pro day, because again, this is the face of your franchise anytime you invest high in a quarterback, or at least you hope he is. And the leadership that Shugg, through adversity and being mature and married now, yes, he's going to be 26 on opening day, but what's the difference if you wind up getting as lucky as, say, Green Bay, going a different route, taking quarterbacks in the first round like Aaron Rodgers and then Jordan Love, and they sit for a while and they're around that age when they finally get a chance to play. That's the vision. I'm not saying I agree with it. I see a quarterback that I wish I had a lot more film on. I wish he had that second year of development like a Jaden Daniels, or what you're hoping to see from Garrett Nussmeier at LSU. I get that. And before the draft, I was definitely saying I saw enough from Spencer Rattler through a terrible situation to have to come in and play, that maybe giving him more time would would have been fair. They decided not to do that, and we're going to have to trust in Kellen Moore. In the end, what he does with his offense, as a former quarterback, as an offensive play designer, he's got to get quarterback right or it's not going to work. So in Kellen we trust until proven otherwise.
Well, that's where I want to go next. Do you guys believe this is Kellen Moore's guy?
I think so, and I think they wouldn't have made this pick without the blessing of Kellen Moore. And the beauty of having the NFL draft on our channel is that I had my face glued to the television for what felt like 3 straight weeks. But, you know, we also have conversations with NFL draft analysts leading up to it. And yes, like you said, everyone was impressed with the maturity, what he was able to do last year at Louisville. The fact that he's 25 years old also helps. You don't have to worry about those rookie issues that people fresh out of college deal with. But the whole time I'm thinking to myself, you know, when you look at what Philly did a few years ago when they had Carson Wentz, they took Jalen Hurts in the 2nd round. Jalen Hurts' pedigree was maybe second to none in that draft class when you saw what he did to Alabama and then at Oklahoma. This is not a Jalen Hurts pick to me based off of the 1 year, the 3 major injuries that we talk about to the quarterback position. But I think this is a guy, when speaking with these analysts, he was trending in the right direction leading up to the draft. So I think this is someone who Kellen Moore gave his blessing for, and I think that's why the Saints drafted it. Unfortunately, if he doesn't see the field, or if he does see the field and he struggles, this honeymoon phase that the Saints fan base is currently in with this guy is going to end quicker than you think.
Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think he covered it, because when it comes down to it, you convinced yourself of a quarterback in a draft that was clearly weak overall at that position. And sitting at number 40, they obviously felt like we have to walk away with somebody at this critical position. At the same time, because Richie said about the wide receiver, I think the Saints had a certain type of wide receiver they needed to come away with if they took one, and it just wasn't there when they were picking. I thought Jaden Higgins at number 40, if he's there, maybe their decision process is a little different. He's a big 6'3", 6'4" receiver from Iowa State. They need size in that wide receiver room. And I think when you look at free agency continuing on, Keenan Allen, Amari Cooper would be more expensive after they've already brought in Brandon Cooks. I think they need size at that position, and they weren't going to take a smaller or an average size receiver. So they were a little boxed in there, and they didn't see the talent available at 40 like they could dream on Shug. And let's just say long-term Shug is a high-level backup. That's not too bad with a 2nd-round pick that you think has a greater upside and you're going to try to coach it out of him. So again, I don't think he's going to wind up being a complete and total bust, because I think his character tells them he can be a long-term help in the quarterback room. Obviously, they want a whole lot more. But when you're picking in the 2nd round versus the 1st, there's a little more leeway to quote-unquote avoid the bust. I think he's going to be a plus asset for them. But like Richie and so many others, I need to see it to think he's going to be a franchise guy.
And, you know, hindsight's always 20/20 with these things. So when you see a Dylan Gabriel go in round 3, who's someone an ample amount of college experience, has all the tools to be maybe a starting quarterback in the NFL, and then Shedeur Sanders, who people were grading to be a 1st-round talent, drops to round 5, you think to yourself, did you reach in round 2? Is this the right pick at round 2? Could you have waited and maybe gotten a better prospect?
Some people believe they could have waited to the 3rd or 4th round and still gotten Shug. I mean, again, that's conjecture, but we'll see. I do want to talk about where these guys should play. To me, you don't mess with Kelvin Banks. You put him at left tackle and you leave him there for a decade. You look at Quincy Riley. I like Alontae Taylor at the nickel. Is this a guy that can play outside for you? Talk about those 2 positions, if you would. Richie, I want to take you first. Where do you think they play those players?
Well, the beauty is when you drafted Taliesin Fuaga out of college, he was a right tackle at Oregon State. So you can move him back to his natural position, even though we heard Dennis Allen and company pretty much say, like, you know, it's not that much of a transition to move from right to left. You could put Kelvin Banks at left. You can put Taliesin Fuaga at right. You put pressure on Trevor Penning, who you didn't pick up his 5th-year option, as a basically show us or get out. Kind of year for him. But I think there's so much versatility both with these guys. Kelvin Banks can also slide to the guard position if Trevor Penning is playing well. So again, I love the versatility there. I think the Alontae Taylor thing with the nickel position, that's just where we've seen him be successful throughout the year. But if you want to see true growth from him, he's got to play on the outside. He's got to lock up the opposition's top receiver. And we haven't really seen that on a consistent basis. So that's why I thought the need at cornerback was much more dire than what they made it seem like when they picked up Quincy Riley later in the draft. draft. So again, we're going to see the Saints secondary grow up. It's just a matter of who's going to be the one doing the growing up. And I don't think the starter they throw out there week 1 is going to be the same guy week 17.
Same question, please.
Right. Well, when we look at a position like the offensive line, I'll say it again, if you can come away with a guy who's a plus starter somewhere for a long time, that's huge in the first round. When you're in the top 10, it has to happen. And the thing you like about Calvin Banks is that he hasn't even turned 22 years old yet, but he's got over 40 starts at Texas, playing in the wide open defenses of the Big 12 and then proving himself in the SEC. And I think he was sort of with a fine-tooth comb kind of analyzed because there was so much on him that he may have slid down some people's draft boards to be a mid to late first round pick simply because they were looking for perfection from a guy who's winning the Outland Award and the Lombardi Award. I sort of like his overall traits and his physical ability potentially even more than Will Campbell with the short arms, even though he's a good athlete. There were times this season where I thought that he didn't impress as well. So seeing LSU play every game versus analyzing a Texas. So to get him at number 9 and knowing that the Raiders, from all reports, if they wouldn't have gone with the running back, that taking the best in the draft and Genty, that they would have pulled the trigger on him, that makes you feel a little better that at least one other top 10 team was certainly looking at Banks as somebody that could be our left tackle, because you're thinking he's going to be the blindside guy. Meanwhile, with Riley, that's an interesting point that you make, because you're thinking, how does he fit in the room with the rest of the corners? Is he a guy who can play the slot, even though he was more on the boundary? I'll mention again that I think there's a vision for Brandon Saley as a defensive coordinator. We're going to see a lot more zone, so the idea of lockdown corner may not be a concept that you worry about as much. And Kool-Aid McKinstry was a second-round pick they traded up for last year. If you're thinking, who's going to be our number 1, it sounds like the front office has invested in him to be that guy. If McKinstry doesn't work out as your best corner, then you question that draft from last year even more.
Saints have about $13 million to spend as of right now after their draft class is taken care of. My take is big wide receiver, you need a veteran corner, and depending on what happens with Derek Carr, you have to look at maybe a veteran backup quarterback. Richie, your thoughts first.
You need a big wide receiver. What do Brandon Cooks, Chris Olave, and Rashid Shaheed all have in common? They're either 6 foot or shorter. That's a problem, especially in the NFL, like you mentioned. I love the Keenan Allen thought. Someone that's taller than 6 foot, that's what you need to aim for. If you can get one of those, because right now, Lester Ricard, who does great analyst work for us, he said the Saints, offensively, from a playmaker perspective, do not scare anyone. And especially when you have 3 receivers who all seemingly do the same thing well, you need someone different. You need a red zone threat. Someone like an A.T. Perry would be nice to have around right now, but you don't have that. I think that's the biggest need that they have right now.
And separation is what that group does bring to the table, but the ability to play between the hashes and stay alive to make those tough catches, short and intermediate, that's not what you want somebody, particularly your number 1 and Chris Olave, doing with his already sort of building concussion history. So that's a major question mark. I think we're going to see again a lot of multi-tight end sets as a result, whether Taysom Hill is part of that, healthy again or not. They reinvested in Juwan Johnson. They didn't take a tight end until late in the 7th round, and they're just going to have to do that, I think, because they need some big targets who can get the job done. With guys hanging on them, can they make a tough catch in traffic and help you move the chains? If they do add somebody at wide receiver out of free agency, all the better, but Allen's probably the best candidate for the price, but he looked like he was slowing down to a point where he may be on the edge of being ineffective last year, with Chicago. So, that's a major issue, and again, if they have to move forward without Carr and they somehow part ways, or he has this surgery that's been rumored, who knows what happens there, but if he's unavailable, period, for 2025, I don't know what they're going to do. They're going to have to trade, I think, for a backup quarterback between now and the start of the season. It might not happen, though, till training camp.
No, I would agree with that. Guys, let's talk about the Derek Carr situation. Jane Slater, again, came out this week. She's been kind of all over this situation with Derek Carr. I'll give you just the meat of what she had to say in her ex post. Carr's been to New Orleans twice in recent weeks to meet with team doctors at the facility. He believes that he has injured his shoulder in the same game in which he injured his wrist. That was, again, the Week 14 game against the Giants. Also, again, the question is, again, surgery. He would rather not get surgery because he had surgery on that arm before. He's still navigating that decision. Also, again, the Saints are trying to decide what's best for the team and also for Derek Carr. And they're still actively trying to make the best decision on the shoulder. And again, the decision is going to be made very soon, again, sooner than later on Derek Carr. Okay. First of all, I talked about this on the radio show this week. You know, if the Saints just would have been upfront and just came out and said, look, Derek Carr's got a shoulder injury. We're working through it. Derek Carr's got some family issues with the miscarriage and the propane tank blowing up in the yard that affected his wife and his family. First of all, I think everybody backs off because, again, they understand they're going through a lot, okay? But the second time, just be honest with the media and the public on what's happening. And there's no controversy here. I think this controversy was built because, again, of lack of information. But with that said, Richie, is he the quarterback for the New Orleans Saints this year?
That's tough, but no, you talk about the lack of information. It kind of feels like they're taking a page out of the Pelicans playbook because you're starting to wonder what's going on over there. The fact that it was leaked in the first place was kind of sketchy to me initially because, again, when he landed in that game against the Giants, I said, oh, man, he probably injured his throwing arm. But turns out it was his left wrist. Then you hear his brother go on the NFL Network ahead of the draft and talk about, oh, you know, this was an issue that happened after the shock of the initial injury was over. But you have to believe he's going to be. I don't think Mickey Loomis and company would sit in front of a bunch of television cameras and say, if he's healthy, he's going to be our starting quarterback moving forward. Now, with that being said, this is a guy that was playing through broken ribs in his first year in New Orleans. So you have to believe that if it can heal naturally and he can get back out on the field and play, I think he's going to do it for the Saints. But then again, there's always that thought of if you need surgery and you're just going to be a fancy tool that we have on the shelf and we can't use you, we're going to have to find a way to part ways with you. That's why you drafted a quarterback in the second round. So I think they are prepared for all possibility. I think the only thing that's going to tell us what's going to happen with him is time.
$80 million in dead money if the Saints trade him or cut him.
Obviously, Carr doesn't want to have the surgery, particularly at his age at this point in his career. If he were to miss a season and have the surgery, who's going to give him a reasonable chance to be a starter versus somehow getting back on the field and proving he can still play? That's a big question mark for him, but I think his feelings were hurt about how this market feels about him, and this led to this sort of public thought after the renegotiating of the contract. He didn't handle his business very well. Now James Slater, who works with David Carr, his brother, that's where this information is coming from. This is a public relations release. We know that. Yeah. But this is the side he's arguing, and it's giving you the thought of, I want to give it time to heal. I think he thinks he's going to be fine and be able to play with it. It's not going to hinder him moving forward. But now the Saints are not at a point where they want to give up whatever cap room they have and cut ties this year. They almost have to do it in another year because that's how the contract is built forward. So I just don't see where there's a situation where the Saints are remotely comfortable starting with Mickey Loomis, don't want to have to deal with him, but they're in a terrible spot. And that's why Mickey Loomis's poker face was so bad pre and post draft when he was being asked about it. He was upset about it, he was bothered by it, and he didn't do a very good job of hiding it with the abrupt, essentially no comment, we're going to see, we'll let you know later. You know, that sort of reaction told you everything you need to know about it. And if he's not happy about it, I can't imagine Kellen Moore, starting his first head coaching job in the league, is happy about a quarterback that he knows isn't fully committed to the franchise.
But I also feel in that same breath that you don't get Kellen Moore without selling Derek Carr to Kellen Moore, saying, here's our starting quarterback, you have one that's been established in the league forever, he's going to be your guy moving forward. I also thought that was a negotiating piece for Kellen Moore to come to New Orleans, but I think in a sense, when you're looking at the NFL draft, it's like, hey, if we do have to draft a replacement quarterback of the future, who in this class do you like? I think that leads to Tyler Shuck. But again, I like to look at this from so many perspectives because what I really didn't like was a couple weeks ago, Derek Carr preaching at a church in Las Vegas. Someone took a 20 to 30 second snippet of him preaching that sermon and they put it on social media and they circulated it with no context whatsoever about, oh, not everyone needs to have an opinion. Stay off social media and all that stuff, when really he was basically saying that the opinion that matters is the Bible. That's what he was getting to. And then before that, he also said, you don't know what someone's going through given the wife's miscarriage and then the propane fire. So again, I was really uncomfortable with that. It kind of rubbed me the wrong way because the fan base was running with a 20, 30 second snippet.
Because that's all they saw.
And instead of the full minute, give yourself, benefit of the doubt. Go find the full context of what he was trying to say. So I think in a sense that rubbed the whole fan base the wrong way, but no one's going to take the time to go watch the whole sermon. It was a great sermon, I thought, but unfortunately, that's the part that revolved around fan base.
It shows you how careful you have to be if you're the quarterback And QB1 in particular of a franchise, you are the face of the franchise. You are constantly under scrutiny to the point where if you bring up something, it can be taken out of context and used against you. And between how he's handled the issue, whatever it is with the shoulder, how severe it is, and having that sermon also be something where he chose to bring up or at least allude to his professional career, the decisions he's made as far as helping the view of the fan in this market to want to support him, he's only hurt that cause. And that's why it's so important when you talk about character. While Tyler Shugg, his character and his ability to handle his business, deal with adversity, say the right things at all times in front of the cameras, in front of executives, that's a big reason why they drafted him. And it's a big reason why folks, when they see it, I said it when I first saw him here, rolling up the sleeves and showing off the guns when you're at practice. It's not a big deal, but you're not a linebacker, you're the quarterback, and you're bringing extra attention upon yourself. Just take it, the average fan, and you wonder why they're against you when you're basically a 500 quarterback here and have been worst in your career. Just think about the big picture. Carr's done a poor job of doing that in his career, and he'd have a lot more respect for the job he's done on the field because he's done a good job in tough situations over the years, and fans can't see that because of the other stuff.
Guys, I can't get the Saints a pass here, though, okay? Again, this injury supposedly happened in week 14. There's got to be, again, a season-ending physical. How was that not caught there? Does he get a physical again before you restructure that deal, or that deal was restructured already? To me, again, how did you miss this? I mean, this is April. I mean, this should have been taken care of in December.
Well, what did Carr do to point it out in January? Did he say, hey, I'm feeling good, it's getting better, no big deal? Because if that's the case, the team's going to take his word on it. You're not going to go, well, we don't trust you, we're going to do more imaging. But
wouldn't you have him examined anyway? I mean, again, at the end of the year, he's had shoulder injuries. Mike Mayock said again that the AC joint's been injured since he was with Oakland.
Right.
And going back to Oakland, Las Vegas. So again, with the injury, wouldn't you want to make sure that, again, that is his throwing arm, that everything is fine?
I think the oversight happens in a sense when one of the narratives towards the end of the season, you're already out of playoff contention, is Derek Carr still working his way back to the field? Right. So I think in a sense, if you're the Saints, you want your starting quarterback out there, and if you see him out there trying to work his way back to the field, you're going to think to yourself probably, there's nothing wrong with his throwing shoulder. He's trying to play right now. It's just his left wrist. Right. So I think in that occurrence, that's where the oversight might have happened, but still, no excuse.
Okay. Does Derek Carr play for the New Orleans Saints this year?
I'm still leaning no, but there are reasons why that could turn around need on both sides. But I will say, 2/3 chance no.
I have to trust them. If they say he's healthy, he's going to play. If he's healthy, he's going to play.
Okay. Richie Mills, Channel 26 Sports, also Jude Young, Crescent Sports, and also 106.7 The Ticket. I'm Eric Asher. You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports. We'll take a break, hear from our underwriters. We'll be right back with more of Inside New Orleans Sports. Stay tuned.
Located at 3701 Iberville Street in Mid-City is Katie's Restaurant and Bar. Open 7 days a week, Katie's offers daily specials for lunch, dinner, and Sunday brunch. Serving New Orleans cuisine such as fried shrimp platters, grilled redfish, and a fully stocked bar. And don't forget about our expanded event seating and local entertainment. Featured on the Best of Food Network's diners, drive-ins, and dives, Katie's Restaurant and Bar.
Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration has been family-owned and operated since 1989. Burkhart has energy-efficient solutions and offers brands such as Mitsubishi ductless AC units and Amana, the only manufacturer with a lifetime unit replacement warranty. Burkhart's offers maintenance bundle packages that include servicing your AC, generator, and tankless water heater. For more information on the services Burkhart's provides, visit acpromise.com. Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration, providing comfort for life.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. Richie Mills and Jude Young, our guests tonight. All right, let's talk some Pelicans. Draft lottery is on Monday night. The Pelicans have a 12.5% chance of getting the first overall pick. They had 13.7% odds of getting the first overall pick in 2012 when they won the lottery and got AD. They had a 6% chance of getting the first overall pick in 2019, and they drafted Zion. Thoughts on maybe them having the ping pong balls fall their way once again? I think it's doubtful, but
Right. I mean, if they do get number one and they get Cooper Flagg, that makes things a lot easier.
That changes everything.
As far as making a decision
Right.
with Zion, that still is going to be a tough one because of the potential value of the asset.
Right.
Whether there are people in the organization who are now not making that final decision, have already thought they're happy to see him go or not, which seems to be what's been alluded to.
Right.
It is Joe Dumars' decision, I think. I don't think Joe Dumars has been given any sort of mandate like some have insinuated. You need to get rid of Zion. He needs to figure out whether Zion's ready to mature or not, and if a change in culture, which was always the big David Griffin word, culture. Culture failed this team, quite obviously. So can the culture led by Zion Williamson be one that can actually be a consistent winner in the league, where he stays on the floor over half the season, at least 60 games a season? I still don't see it, but when it comes down to it, if they don't get the number one overall pick, they've got to start thinking of that selection as another asset as far as a roster that's still got some young, solid players that you can build with, and say, what can we do to sort of shake up the apple cart here and get a new 1A, so to speak, on the floor and complement him? I think that's got to be the goal here, one way or the other. If it's Flagg, that's your 1A, and that makes it a lot easier. But 12.5% chance, come on.
Right.
Not going to happen.
But if they don't, and let's say they drop to 3 or even 8, do you hold on to the pick?
You get out. You get out. You go get you a body, get you a proven body in the league. You talk about a culture led by Zion Williamson. We had a glimpse of that 2 years ago. He was in shape. He was passionate. He was giving 110% on the court. He dropped 40 in his first postseason game, and then unfortunately he got hurt. Well, so I think we all experienced the Zion Williamson experience in that sense. But I think currently a culture led by him is not one you want to really bank on if you're Joe Dumars, especially Brandon Ingram's introductory press conference in Toronto. He said it's going to be in a place where people play hard and they listen. I think those are two shots at Zion Williamson and the Zion-led Pelicans. So in a sense, I think if you're Joe Dumars, if you don't get Cooper Flagg, you get out. And that's just my opinion on the matter, because
I agree with you.
You haven't heard about anybody else in this draft outside of maybe an Ace Bailey or something like that. But still, he had another lottery pick on his team and they struggled this year. Do you want that? Do you want a superstar that can't play with another superstar? So in a sense, it's Cooper Flagg or bust for me.
Same thing?
And when it comes down to it, they need to figure out with veterans and not go hyper young again here. When they've got enough assets at their disposal, including now the Bucks picks, which look a lot more attractive because Giannis' situation, he's going to move on. When it comes down to it in the NBA, you're facing a growing problem with the guaranteed contract, and at least there's some flexibility built into Zion's that aren't in other guys, and that is Luka Doncic. He's about 50 pounds heavier than he used to be. That's why the Mavericks, even though it still seems a little crazy, parted ways with him and sent him to the Lakers. Or you have a John Morant who can't behave himself and handle the fame, the money, and the power off the floor. Zion's a different version of that, not getting in trouble with the law, but we've seen enough that says the maturity on and off the floor are a major question, and it comes to commitment. Pelicans need a committed roster. Now, you may lack the overall top-end talent when you're done shuffling those pieces and maybe making a deal or two to build that kind of roster. But I think Joe Dumars, the architect of the most team-oriented, superstarless champion in the NBA in the last however many years, many decades, back in 2004, that's what he's brought in to try to do here. So it's a product that fans are proud of and have hope that is going to be a consistent winner. It's a tough road. It's threading the eye of a needle to build a team like that that's consistently good when you don't have the star power. But if you do have a star that isn't committed, you're going to fail regardless. And I think this is a point in the franchise's history. They need that stability of a consistent product on the floor.
So bottom line, is Zion on this team this year?
That's a much harder question to me than even Carr. Because, again, you've got to get value for him. And I don't think Joe Dumars is going to just push him out the door if he thinks, okay, worst case scenario, I'm going to work with him personally, with this coaching staff, with other leaders on the team, if other veterans are coming in to try to get the most out of Zion and at least up his value, so I can judge a little bit more than just a few conversations in the offseason. So it really is 50-50. Who's willing to take the plunge on Zion to give the Pelicans the value they need to part ways with him? I don't know yet.
Richie?
I think he is on the roster because I think Joe Dumars is a very smart individual. And I think if you're walking into a very complex situation with the New Orleans Pelicans, you give it a year. You analyze this situation for a year, and then you accurately make your assessment out of that. You talk about building a team off loyalty. Unfortunately, we talk about Cooper Flagg or bust. The best way to do that is through the draft. And you look at Oklahoma City Thunder right now. I mean, they're the top seed in the West. They built it through the draft. They added the right pieces pieces, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Alex Caruso, and now they're one of the best teams in the West. I think Joe Dumars is a very smart guy who's seen what the old NBA looks like and what the new NBA is right now. You talk about, Zion Williamson's maturity issues. In his opening press conference, Joe Dumars said, well, we had several meetings before I even got here because I worked in the front office. So I think if you're Joe Dumars, in a sense, you build it through the draft, but you give it a year just so you can see yourself where it all might have gone wrong. I think that's why Willie Green stays around, Zion Williamson stays around, and I think movement, player transactions are minimal in a sense, but I think we'll see more of that next year.
Let me just say, I didn't say loyalty, I said commitment.
Oh,
I don't expect any loyalty nowadays in the NBA. Everybody's every man for himself, I get it. But again, I think Richie's got the right viewpoint of what I think should happen. It's got to be patience above Joe Dumars. Again, if you don't believe there's some sort of mandate to fix this right away, then that is the prudent course of action. And when it comes down to it with Dumars, I do trust him to judge character above anything else. You may not get the right judgment of product as far as talent, especially the young talent, because Griffin actually drafted pretty well overall. You mentioned what the Thunder did, but they still were able to get Gilgeous-Alexander in a big trade. So again, they got the right piece to lead the way and drafted around it. I think the drafting around it has been done really well here in New Orleans. It's the lead dogs that haven't showed up what they have to do.
And I've been the one that's really kind of been pushing the narrative. Again, it's time to be able to cut bait. Again, he had a nice season last year. Again, got the weight down. Maybe again, right now he's to another general manager out there. They're willing to maybe take a shot there. But I think that kind of changes with bringing Joe Dumars in. He's got to have an opportunity to be able to see what he has, and I think they're going to do that for a year. I think he's going to take a year with Willie Green with this roster and say, okay, what do I have? And then at that point, make a decision. I don't see anything happening by the trading deadline unless things just fall apart. I do think he's going to give everybody a chance to be able to prove that they can be a New Orleans Pelican.
Right, and I agree with you, and I think the fact that they're going to back Willie Green, and there were other franchises interested in him as a coach, they're saying that as far as a leadership standpoint goes, he's part of the solution, not the problem. And if you surround Zion constantly from the very top with people that he respects, that have been in the game, you're hoping that that will force him down the right path, and then just getting a little older and wanting to not waste his career, not fail as a superstar, pushes you across the finish line. That's the vision if you're talking about waiting another year.
Do you like what Joe's done so far in terms of bringing in his staff? Jason Hervey was just added. Again, he left the Trailblazers organization. He rejoins Joe Dumars. He worked with him from 05 to 09. Troy Weaver was brought in as well. He worked with Joe Dumars. Do you like the fact that he's going to guys that, again, the former Detroit now, these guys with him Detroit, guys that again, he knows that he's comfortable with?
Exactly. That's what you need. That's what you want him to have, is that comfortability of knowing that the guys you're bringing in are going to share that same vision, that same mindset. And again, we go back to that's probably why he's retaining Willie Green. He said he's known Willie Green since high school. Since Willie Green was in high school. So again, you know what these guys are about. You know your vision and plan for an organization. Now it's just a matter of seeing how it all plays out.
Guys, let's shift gears to college baseball. LSU 38-9, 15-9, tied with Georgia for third in the SEC. They're third in D1, fourth in the coaches poll. Arkansas at home this weekend. Thoughts on the Tigers?
You know, it was interesting going into their series at Texas A&M this past weekend. I wasn't buying on they had it all figured out and they were the #2 team in the country. Now, they're one of the most talented teams and by far the best conference, and there's certainly no doubt that if they get it all together at the right time, they can win the whole thing. That said, even though they go into this series with Arkansas this weekend at the box as the 1 and 2 teams in batting average and a lot of the offensive categories of note on the season, some of that's skewed because LSU's really only 7th in the conference in conference games, where Arkansas is still #1, and they just battered Texas's pitching staff when the Longhorns were 19-2 in the league, and all of a sudden the Hogs at home showed what they're capable of. So this is a big challenge for LSU to be able to say, hey, Arkansas is probably going to score some runs here. These bats need to be more productive. There's not scary pop outside of Bear Jones in their lineup, although they've got some consistent power. They've only got 2 guys, though, in SEC play batting over 300, and the consistency in that lineup hasn't been there. They've got to find find a little bit more of that one way or the other, whether it's shuffling the order, maybe giving another bat like a Dalton Beck, for example, Josh Pearson more at bats, mix that in and say, we're still competing here for these key at bats, even though we're in May and even though we're in a super regional host spot right now.
Yes.
Because if they wind up losing 2 out of 3 or getting swept by Arkansas, that can change their whole season. Even with the road trip coming up to South Carolina where they should handle their business there, it's a bad team. Paul Maneri's got some issues there.
Right.
If they don't get the job done this weekend, there's a scenario, and a very real one, that they wind up not being a super regional host. If they're at the box all the way through to have a chance to go to Omaha, I say they're going to do it. If they're not, then there are big questions on not only the weaknesses that are potentially there that I just mentioned, but how they finish the season and their momentum to put themselves in that situation.
A very popular local college baseball coach told me weeks ago that he thinks LSU is going to the College World Series, and that was based off how they were playing weeks ago. Now you see the offensive inconsistencies, like you just mentioned, sort of plaguing them a little bit, putting them behind the 8 ball in the bottom of the 9th situation when you have to pull out some magic late in the game. I just think that's ultimately going to keep them from making the College World Series. I think they'll be in contention, but if your offense isn't what it was a couple years ago, I think we saw how great that offense was when they won a national championship. You're not going to be competing in Omaha this year.
I want to talk about SLU, and I'm going to go to you first on that. 35-13, 20-7, leaving the Southland at Nichols Thursday through Sunday in terms of their series. Do they have to win the Southland to get in, or can they get an at-large bid?
So their current situation, if they win 2, they're co-champs of the South, the co-regular season champs of the Southland Conference. If they sweep, they're outright regular season champions. So I think in that sense, if you sweep and you get bounced in your tournament, I think they are an at-large bid. And I say that because this conference for so long has been a 2-bid conference. You saw Southeastern be a 2 seed in the Baton Rouge Regional, which felt like under Matt Reiser a decade ago now. I think it is that this year. And I think when talking to head coach Bobby Barbier this week, he said 5 teams in the conference right now have 30-plus wins. UTRGV took college baseball by storm early in the year based off their non-conference wins. They beat Dallas Baptist when they were a top 25 team. The fact that you won that series at home, I think, gives you a better chance. I know the RPI is going to fluctuate throughout the year, but I think based off their resume right now, I think they're an at-large bid, especially if they sweep Nichols this weekend.
I would like that to be true, but I don't think it is. And there's a reason why, and it's just the raw numbers and what their RPI is going to be and how they're going to be judged. I had Mark Etheridge of D1Baseball.com on my show. We talked about the fact that the scenario that the Southland wants is a final series with UTRGV, whose RPI is going to be maybe 30, even better, facing off more than likely a Southeastern, and Southeastern wins it, you can get both of those teams in. I think Southeastern's hurt by not getting enough of the quality wins. They had opportunities, for example, to beat Southern Miss a couple times in non-league. That's a nationally ranked team. They needed a little bit more of that because their overall body of work in the Southland, which is in a good spot around 10th in the overall RPI, that helps them. But the fact that there are 3 really bad teams in this league at the bottom, that brings down the league's RPI and the individual teams, is going to hurt them in the raw numbers chase. That said, if Southeastern can sweep Nichols, then sweep their little 4-team regional at home and lose 2 out of 3 to RGV, that might still be able to get them in. But again, we talked about threading a needle. They may need to do that. That's not a comment on their quality. I think they're better than UTRGV, whose pitching's taken a dent here with some health issues. Southeastern's pitching is absolutely tremendous. Their ERA in leagues right at 3, and they're bashing a bunch of home runs and hitting the ball well too. What Bobby Barbier has done to change that roster from the Matt Reiser era, I think that's why there was a move for change at Hammond despite Reiser's success, who ironically is going to be hosting Tulane at Memphis this weekend. They were playing small ball. They were leading the country in getting hit by a pitch. Southeastern has some real advantages as a mid-major baseball program, that they can have talented lineups that bash the baseball and still have great pitching. And in a couple of years, Barbier's proven he could reshape that group to do that. They're a much more dangerous team now than they used to be, and they would be a scary team to face in a regional because the pitching led by Brendan Stuprich, who was the pitcher of the year in the conference. When he's on, he's tremendous, and he can shut down big-time programs' lineups. Lions, if they get to the postseason, even if they go to Baton Rouge, nobody's going to want to face them.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Tulane 28-20, 11-10. Again, they're 5th in the AAC at Memphis, as you mentioned. Richie, your thoughts? Is it another situation where they got to win their tournament to get in?
I think it is, but
and can they?
I think they can. I mean, Clearwater, Florida, you look at the roster, he's recruited a ton of players from Florida. So if you wonder why they play so well in the conference tournament, everyone goes back home that time of the year. But I reserve judgment on this team until they make it to the conference tournament. And that's just what the last 2 years have taught me, whether it be 14 wins in the regular season and then you're playing Paul Skeens in the Baton Rouge Regional. I will reserve all judgment until they make it to the conference tournament. Are they inconsistent right now? Absolutely. But I think we've sort of established who the top tier teams are in the American Athletic Conference and what it looks like to beat those teams. 25-7 loss to UTSA. That's a pretty big eye-opener for Jay Ullman and company. But again, I'm going to reserve all judgment on this team to the conference tournament, because if you would have judged them the past 2 years, then they would have made you look silly.
It comes down to how much pitching they're going to get, because they haven't gotten enough of it, even with Michael Lombardi being one of the best closers in the country, one of the best two-way players in the country. And he's a little dinged up right now, too, so that's another concern
to play this weekend,
Right, exactly. So, but they need him in Clearwater, like mentioned, where they're going to feel like, hey, this is our place. We're going to be excited because we won here 2 years in a row. UTSA is really good. Their RPI is like 20. They're 37-10. They've beaten up everybody in the league, not just Tulane. Maybe the best scenario is the Green Wave. Again, they're playing perhaps to be the number 2 seed here. Get to that 2 or 3 spot and be in the other bracket. Maybe somebody takes care of UTSA for you or wears down their pitching, because for the most part, I think the American postseason tournament is going to be a slugfest, because a lot of these teams seem to struggle with their pitching, and we're seeing some signs that Tulane offensively up and down their lineup. They've got some talented guys and some pop. It's starting to come together a little bit. So if they're clicking at the right time, there's no reason why they can't go through that particular postseason tournament.
UNO's 25-12, 12-50. They're 7th in the conference at Texas A&M Corpus Christi this weekend. They got to win the conference.
Right, they got to
win the
tournament. That's obviously a given. They're not in an at-large position. And let's face it, there are 6 teams with winning records in the league, and then there's UNO, a number 7. The league is better, but the Privateers do have a lineup that's capable of carrying them a long way. It's always been a question of pitching under Blake Dean, and that's still the situation with Dax Norris. But I will say that Grant Edwards and Zach Longshore at their very best, what we've seen of them this year, they're a dangerous 1-2 punch that can punch out double-digit batters in a game, and they're going to need those two to be excellent in the postseason if they're going to do anything. More than likely, I think Southeastern gets the job done at Nichols. UNO's the number 7 on the road at UTRGV, and a week from now they're going to be opening up the postseason in front of 5,000 or 6,000 fans in Edinburgh, Texas. So if they can get the job done in game 1 there's no reason to think they can't survive that particular regional and get to a final series, because again, they really hit the ball. Bryce Callaway won't win Player of the Year in the league because they're the 7th seed, but he's got 9 saves, he's hit 15 home runs, and he's batting .400. Let's just say he's one of the best mid-major players in America.
And I saw that yesterday. I had to do a double take. I'm like, Bryce Callaway can hit, but oh wait, he's been a pretty good pitcher all year long. But you don't want to see that offense in your regional, whether you be UTR, GV, or Southeastern, because that tournament is just offensive driven. It's so unique, and anyone can really knock off anyone in that tournament.
Richie, again, I watch Richie every night. You've been all over it. Loyola wins the Southern States Athletic Conference Championship. They're going to the NAI tournament, and so is Suno. And Suno, they're just starting their program. Talk about it.
Yeah, 2 years in existence, their first NAI tournament experience. And if you're wondering why I'm laughing, I mean, it's an impressive feat, but they're going to the LSU Shreveport bracket. LSUS this year is 51. 5-1-0. They have not lost. They have a chance to do something maybe we haven't really seen in college baseball, but I think it's just a testament to college baseball here in the state of Louisiana. Loyola winning their conference for the first time, the SSAC, but it's their first conference championship in 23 years. Suno's there. Delgado was in the mix. LSU Eunice, 49-3. They're the number 2 team in the country, and they just won Region 23. I expect them to be playing for a national championship. But and you look at Southeastern, Tulane, LSU. We really just touched on it all. But college baseball this year is at an all-time high in the state of Louisiana, and the Loyolas and Sunos of the world are definitely proving that to be true.
You had you talked to Gary Smith this week, about Tulane, and something big happening in Tulane right now. I want to get into that. Their NIL is going in-house. The Green Wave Club is going to take over that. Don and Laura Peters, again, who have given $20 million to Tulane Athletics, gave $3.5 million to start the Green Wave Talent Fund. Talk a bit about, this transition now. I had Mike Arata on this week on the show as well.
He's a big name, and he still wants to be influential while not being in-house.
Right.
Kelly Camarda, who helped start the Fear the Wave Collective, is now in-house.
Yes.
And that's what's going to happen around the country, to be able to bring some sort of semblance of control to the NIL situation, no matter what happens with this big House settlement, where news is breaking several times a week, but we don't know when we're going to get to the finish line and if it's going to kick into gear next year. Tulane's just taking care of that issue right now and taking care of the NIL so that they can manage it in-house, like all the programs are going to do, all the FBS programs, and likely many, many more. The only question Green Wave fans are going to have is the Fear the Wave Collective was so good.
It was.
Are we going to still have the same quality management in-house? The money's going to be there. Right. There is support and belief now that we need to support Tulane athletics, and it enhances the university, what wasn't there for decades. So I think fans can relax. I think it's going to be done right. And I'm very impressed with David Harris. I know Troy Dannon has made a real career for himself here and moved on to bigger and better things, but he wasn't necessarily loved as a person you had to work with in and out. You may have the best of both worlds with Harris, who seems to be an on-the-ball AD that people really speak highly of behind the scenes. I'm excited for where Tulane's going, and this is just part of the process of NIL finally making sense one day, although we don't know when that day's going to come, hopefully sooner than later.
Real big, especially if again, Nick Saban and the president have their way. Your thoughts on them bringing this in-house now?
Well, I think it's better for the control purpose, but if you're David Harris, it kind of feels like you're preparing for the long term as opposed to the person you just replaced, and Troy Dannon, who seems to leave for a new job every year. But I think the control aspect of it is better. It's just one of those things, you're waiting to see how it all shakes out, what the final tally is on that. But again, Tulane needed control. They're putting themselves in position to have that moving forward. But still, the money that's rolling in there is crazy. I mean, Ron Hunter just rebuilt his entire starting five. Got a 7-footer out of the transfer portal, which is kind of unheard of.
Yes, no doubt. And of course, the bubble is being constructed. It's a little bit behind again, but they're going to have that ready for them. Just to their point, Summerall, 2 years in a row having to turn his roster over. We lost 30 players this year. He brings in a total of 26 in the transfer portal. So again, that tells you a little bit about that. But by the way, Tulane football ranked top 3 in the group of 5 in terms of the transfer portal. At LSU, number 1 transfer class in the portal, 18 total players, 16 in the first window, 2 in the second. So again, both teams doing very, very well in the portal, and needed and necessary, right? I got about a minute for both you guys. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's very expensive to bring in, 3 transfer portal quarterbacks in the same off season. So again, that just goes to show you the money that's being swayed for Tulane. But I'm excited about the fall. I'm excited about the football season. Excited about the baseball season. Southland Conference tournament's one of my favorite.
Tulane, I think this is a roster that's shaping up to being one that's going to look sort of like a more talented version of the Willie Fritz era, where they're going to have to win with defense in the running game. They don't seem to have the wide receiver talent they've had the past couple of years, and they've got 3 different quarterbacks, none of which gives you the feeling that you're going to get as lucky as you have been the last couple of starters. Yes. So we'll see how that works out, but we've seen Summerall at Troy win with a similar built roster before. If you have great talent on defense, that will take you a long way. LSU, number 1 transfer portal class in the country. Adding A.J. Halsey, the safety, is massive.
Yes,
I think they're going to be tremendous on both sides of the ball. If the young offensive linemen, though, that are actual high school recruits in-house step up and replace 4 guys who were drafted, the sky's the limit, but we're going to learn a lot right away when they play Clemson, because Clemson might be a top 5 team this year.
You like what Kelly has done?
I do, but while you're waiting on football, go watch some baseball, please. I mean, there's so much great baseball.
Alumni Field's a fun place to watch a game,
right? I mean, we really, again, and it starts with the high school coaches, even going back to Little League. Again, for some reason, again, we've got great coaches in this state across the board, from recreational all the way up, and you see it when it comes to college and even junior college.
I love spring football, and I'm seeing a ton of football content right now. Go to a baseball game.
Right.
That's all I have to say about that. But no, Brian Kelly, we're waiting to see if LSU Clemson's going to be on our air in the fall. Right. The SEC, now you get me stressed out just thinking about it.
He's going to be out there filming 7-on-7s in the heat, and I'm going to be at home watching his video.
That's exactly right. Richie, one more time, the great program over at Channel 26.
Weeknights, WGNO News at 6 and 10, Friday at 10:30, and Saturday morning at 10:30 on WGNO. We have the WGNO Sports Zone. Friday Night Fastball is Friday at 11 on NOLA 38, and the replay at midnight on WGNO. and it's just going to keep going.
There you go. Crest City Sports.
This weekend, bringing you the Brother Martin Holy Cross Baseball Series, the semifinal, weather permitting, starting Thursday night. We'll be there to try to make that happen, along with our great analysis. And coming up very soon, Ken Trahan and the staff will be getting together with high school football coaches from around the state and giving you in-depth previews on both sides of the ball to get you ready for right around the corner. We'll be playing high school football before you know it.
And Coach can catch you, folks catch you on the radio where and when?
106.7 The Ticket following this man's show. He's on from 4 to 6. I'm on from 6 to 7. 4 nights a week when we don't have live games and all the other great sports that we have on the best sports station in town. 106.7 The Ticket.
Gotta check it out. All right, thanks so much for tuning. First of all, thanks to both you gentlemen for joining me today. I really love having you guys on the program. And thanks so much for tuning in. Remember, there are plenty of ways to catch our program. Now, there's a QR code on your screen that will take you to my website, ericasher.com, and also the WLAE-TV YouTube channel. So again, set your DVR, I always say, and you'll never miss the program between WLAE-TV, WLAE-TV 2, Pelicans Sports Television, so many ways to catch our show. Set that DVR, you'll never miss the program. Also, want to remind everybody, as Jude just said, you catch me on the radio 4 to 6 weekdays. That's on 106.7 The Ticket. You can listen live at ericasher.com. We got the iHeartRadio app, the TuneIn Radio app. 106.7 The Ticket has our own app as well. So again, digitally, you can take us anywhere. Also, again, remember, we're on all podcasting platforms when it comes to our podcast, both Jude's podcast and my podcast of our program. So check that out as well. And of course, want to thank the staff here at WLAE-TV who do a great job, again, producing our program. Again, Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, Alex Chacon, and our fantastic director, William Hill. Also, don't want to leave without telling you guys, please support the underwriters who support this program. We appreciate each and every one of them. For Richie Mills and also Jude Young, I'm Eric Asher. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you next week for another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports.
Hey, I'm Keith Spira from NOLA.com and the Times-Picayune. My guest this week on Let's Talk is Kevin Griffin, the singer, guitarist, and primary songwriter of Better Than Ezra. We'll talk about the 30th anniversary of the band's deluxe album and what happened when they played at the Saints Super Bowl victory party. Tune in this week on Let's Talk.
Our money, she's my purpose. I'm here to walk with her, hold her hand until she can walk alone. Kind of like being a father in this world.
We're local and educational. You're watching WLAE-TV, celebrating 40 years of New Orleans public television.